Hi guys, and welcome to Life on the Edge. Today we're going to be looking at this little specimen in the box here from Extrema Ratio. I'm not sure if that's coming up in the image. And the knife specifically is called the Frame Rock. So let's get him out of here. Chunky little fellow. Now look, normally I'm not going to be showing you the boxes, but I'm showing you this one today because it's a particularly nice box. It's a nice hard case plastic box, little seal around the edge, frame rock on the inside there, and dark grey against black. Sort of a velvety finish, sponge finish on the inside. All the paraphernalia that you guys are not interested in, that don't eat me. And that's the guy you're actually here for. Let's get all that out the way. Nice packaging. So here he is. I mentioned that he's a chunky chap, and as you can see, he really is. I got to tell you, I love chunky knives. Well, look, I love all sorts of different knives, but this guy is a really chunky little chap, as you can clearly see. Nice design, very handsome knife from all angles. And I know a lot of people don't like the chunky knife because they're not necessarily the most convenient EDCs and not necessarily the sliciest knives. But you know what? Knives for different reasons, different users, and different tastes. Thank goodness we don't have all the same taste or the same requirements from our knives. Otherwise, we'd all probably be carrying the same thing. This guy, as I mentioned, Extrema Ratio. Ooh, let's try that again. Shocking. Very smooth action on this knife, actually. As I was saying, Extrema Ratio, made in Italy. You can see it on the blade there. On this side, the name of the actual knife. See if we can get that in frame there. Frame Rock. I don't know if that's picking that up with a little code on there. I'm assuming that's just a model number because this is not a limited edition knife. Now this is actually a very similar to a limited edition knife. So the limited edition knife, also made by Extrema Ratio, had a drop point. And that knife was specifically made for Collini, the knife retailer in Italy. And only 100 of those were made. So this is, I suppose, a production version of that knife, albeit with a few changes. So the handle side of the knife is identical to that knife. And this one is in a spear point as opposed to the drop point of the limited edition one. Really nicely finished. As I said, very handsome looking knife, in my opinion. That's all subjective. Let's go through some of the specs of this knife before we go on, before I forget to do that. So the knife is, the overall length of the knife is 181 millimeters in the civilized world. And that's 7.1 inches for the rest of the world. I'm just kidding. But yeah, 7.1 inch overall length, 181 millimeters. The blade length itself is 75 millimeters, that's 3 inches. And the width of the blade is 6 millimeters. Chunky 6 millimeter blade. I absolutely love that. This is actually the thickest knife in my collection. Now, I know you get thicker blades, thicker blade stock than that. But in terms of my folders, this is the thickest one I've got. And I absolutely love that. Blade material is the Bowler N690. Quite a nice blade steel. And the frame is full titanium. Frame lock, stainless steel insert. So with the over travel stop on the inside there, a little bit of an extension. You can just see it poking through the gap there of that stainless steel insert. So no lock stick at all, blade lock, whatever you call it. Really smooth action. It has ball bearing pivot, so lovely smooth action. I'm not sure if those ball bearings are ceramic or steel. The Extrema Ratio website doesn't tell you either. Nice little pivots as well. So quite a big pivot screw there, which is in keeping in the chunkiness of the knife. No proprietary hardware, just a normal flat, which is kind of unusual because most of the time we see Torx nowadays. There's Torx hardware elsewhere on the knife. But what I like about this is that, and I'm going to try getting close here so that you can actually see that pivot screw is scalloped on the edge. And then we've got this separate little screw. Now, I'm sure this is probably found in other knives, and none of the knives that I have, but this little screw then sits in there and sits in one of those little scallops to prevent this screw from unscrewing, from continuous opening and closing. So no need for Loctite or anything like that. I thought that was quite neat. And again, the actual look of it is in keeping, I think, with the aesthetic of the entire knife. Nice little details on the knife, the little dimple there and the cutout here. There's no real attempts except for that to make the knife any lighter either. It's sort of an unapologetic chunky design. So if you look on the inside there, let's see if we can get some light on the inside of the knife there. Maybe you can see it there. So no milling, no attempts to lighten that frame at all. But very nice. It feels really good in the hand. Deep pocket carry, extremely deep pocket carry, and it's quite a extreme pocket clip that as well. You don't see something like that too often, quite unique. But I don't think it's at odds with the rest of the chunky design of the knife. I actually quite like it. I think it adds a little bit to the aesthetic, the little drilled holes into there and that overall shape there. Now, when you first see it, it looks like that could be really uncomfortable in hand. But I must say, it's as a right-hander, it is on the side that you grip. But it seems to sit at just the right sort of place there, which is just behind the knuckle in that fold of your hand. So when you grab it, it actually is not uncomfortable. It looks like it would be, but it actually isn't. It doesn't worry one at all. I mentioned that it's an extremely deep pocket carry, and you can see because that clip folds around the outside of the knife, when that's in the pocket, all you're going to see is that pocket clip. You're not going to see any of the knife sticking out. So you'll just see that clip sticking out of your pocket. On the end there, we've got a little glass breaker, and that glass breaker is actually mounted into the frame on this side. So reversible clip, which is really nice, reversible and tip-up carry. So if you reverse that clip, the glass breaker actually stays put. But you can see that it's been milled out. There's a little hole cut out into the pocket clip on that side. So when you flip that pocket clip around, that glass breaker would just then stick through the other side. So yeah, nice design. Overall, the feeling of the knife is really good, very solid in the hand, and it is a heavy beast. This, according to their specs, this is a 270 gram knife, which is 9.6 9.6 ounces. Well, let's actually check that. Shall we do that? I've got a scale over here. Here we go. Let's get this on camera. And as you can see, genius that I was, I got a highly reflective scale. So you get to see my studio lights. We'll try and get that centered. Really clever move. Let's fire this up. I'm going to start with... we don't want to... There we go. Start off with grams, and let's put that on there, and let's see if they're right with their specs. So that's... that's not 1.9, it's 192 grams. What did they claim? What did I say? 270 grams. It's interesting. 192 grams. Let's just see. Yeah, scale is zeroed. 192 grams. Interesting. Let's just see what's that in ounces. Let's go right through that again. 6.8 ounces as opposed to their claim of 9.6 ounces. I'll have to check the rest of the specs as well. Well, that said, the the weight that they measured on their site is for the other version of this knife, which has the DLC black coated blade. So maybe that DLC adds extra weight to it. I'm just kidding. There's obviously a discrepancy either in how they weighed it or in our scales we used. But let's just check the rest of those measurements then while we're there. Let's keep everyone honest here. So what did they say? They said blade length 75 mils. So I'm assuming that was taken from that to there, to the tip of the blade. Yeah, that looks like 75 mils. And the overall length, 181 mils. I'm just going to do this. I do it too accurate. Yeah, that looks about right. So it's just the weight that there's a discrepancy. So it's either my scale or I don't know what they weighed. Materials on the knife also really good. It's a Bowler N690 steel, which is a decent steel. I think I actually mentioned that again already, but it's a decent steel. But overall, I really like this knife. I mentioned earlier it's probably not going to be the sliciest knife around, but yeah, I've got knives for that. Yeah, and you want something a little bit different in the collection. And look, I'll be honest with you, I'm sort of the guy that buys a knife because I like it, and I have it in my collection because it's just nice to have, not necessarily because a knife's the most practical thing out. And this probably isn't the most practical thing out, but it is really super smooth, lovely fidget toy, lovely feel, and beautifully finished. It really is beautifully finished. And if we look at that spear point blade, got the sort of swedge, false edge, whatever you want to call it, on the back there, and then a flat grind on this side, and it came really sharp. It's not the most sort of mirror edge you've ever seen, but decently sharp out of the box. Nice jimping on the back there, so you can grab this. So no finger choil up the front there, but a decent and generous sharpening choil, certainly on the end there. Yeah, so good in hand. So let's, before I forget, do a little size comparison. I probably don't have the most commonly used knife that I see on reviews for size comparison, being the Ontario Rat. But I'll use some that probably most people know just to get a sense of it. So the first one is the Medford Slim Midi. And get a sense of it there. So pretty much the same size in terms of overall length, and even sort of in the height of the knife. The big difference will be in the width of the knife, this being the Slim Midi Marauder. The other Marauders are of course thicker and will probably be more comparative to this, but the Slim Midi is a little bit narrow, but in general roughly that same kind of size. The other one I got, the Mini Barrage, probably most people know. Again, sort of in that area in terms of height of the knife, a little bit narrower, slightly shorter on the Barrage, certainly lighter. It's got different materials and it's a lot thinner as well. Give you a sense of that. And then the last up is the Spyderco Manix2. This is the one in the 154 cm. But again, you can see roughly that kind of size knife. The Spyderco a little bit longer in this instance, but lighter and considerably thinner. Now, any one of those knives would be a better prospect for EDC, but again, like I said, this is probably not the knife you're going to go buy. You can EDC it, but it's probably not going to be a first choice for EDC, except for those days that you just want something chunky. So yeah, overall, really, really nice knife. I've enjoyed having it. Great fidget toy, as I said, beautifully finished. So those are pretty much the sort of good parts of the knife. It does have a few quirks, downsides. I don't know what to call them. Things that I don't particularly like about the knife. And the one is the detent. The knife has a pretty weak detent, especially when you consider the weight size of that blade. And I'm going to try to demonstrate this to you. So I mentioned that it is a tip-up carry and reversible. But, you know, if you imagine that knife in your pocket, tip up, I'm going to try and do something now, and without bashing my equipment or the desk, see if I can actually do this. So imagine this is sitting in your pocket, and you're, you know, being a little bit active, you jump off something. And by the way, what I'm demonstrating, you know, is not some bogus thing. This has actually happened to me with a tip-up carry knife with a weak detent. So, and I can see this potentially happening with this knife. So it's sitting in your pocket. You hop off something, and, you know, there's a bit of a jolt in your pocket. See if I can... Of course, it's not going to work now. Let's try that again. So there you go. Now, it wasn't much of a slap that, but you can see what's happened is it's just enough to get that knife open. Now, you can imagine this sitting in your right-hand pocket, which it normally would be for a right-handed person. I'm a right-handed person. If that knife's up against your pocket, probably nothing will happen. But if it's slightly off the edge of your pocket, that could open just ever so slightly like that. You go to pull this knife out of your pocket. That is going to dig into the size of your pocket and rip it up. Now, I'm weird. I'm weird in many ways, I suppose, but I'm weird, odd in the way that I carry a knife. I'm right-handed, but I always carry my knives in my left pocket. I have more important, more vital things in my right pocket. So my knife sits now on that side. So if that had to happen, that knife would be sitting like that in my left-hand pocket. Now, if I put my left hand, or as I normally do, if I pull my knife out, I sort of cross-draw, I move across and take the knife out of my left-hand pocket. If I move across and put my hand into my pocket, that's what's waiting to greet me. Yeah, that's not so great. Anyway, so it doesn't bother me that much because I'm not going to EDC this knife, but I think it's just something to be aware of. So that's the one thing. Now, the other quirk in the design of the knife is the ratio of blade width to handle width. And what it happens, especially because of the volume of blade on this side and the position of the pivot in relation to the blade, when you close that blade closes, and the edge of that blade, I see if I can show that somehow. There, you can see it. There's the point of the blade. So right over there, you can see that blade is sitting just below the surface of the knife. So much so that even if I rub my thumb across it like that, my thumb actually touches the edge of that blade. And that's partly to do with how close the blade is to the edge, because it's probably just a millimeter. You can see it over there shining. It's about a millimeter below the edge of the blade. And the fact that there's this big gap, which is a product of, you know, the width of the blade, that's a thick gap, which means that if your fingers rest on there, a little bit of the meat of your finger actually goes into the back there, and it really rests right on the edge of that blade. And, you know, with your little finger, it's even more so. Now, if that blade is sitting, that knife is sitting in your right-hand pocket, and you put your hand into your pocket to get something, it means that your small finger is scraping right along the edge of that blade. That's probably not a very clever thing to do. So, yeah, I find it strange that they did that. You know, I think it would have been a pretty easy fix. You know, there's a couple of things. If the blade, you know, it's the position of that pivot, perhaps. If the blade was a little bit thicker on the back end, and then they added that width to the, yeah, you know, there's various things that could be done. And knife designers would know that better than I would. But I think those are the, you know, a couple of things just to be aware of, that weak detent and that, which is not particularly clever. So go into it with your eyes open. It's still, and I'm still glad I've got this knife, and you know, I'm enjoying owning it, and it is a fidget toy for me. I just am aware of that, you know, that I don't end up cutting myself. But yeah, thwack, you know, nice sound, nice action. You can do. I'm going to try to do the, probably screw it up horribly, you know. Yeah, that was a bit of a soft one, but you can actually, if you get your finger in there and get it right, you can do a pretty decent Spidey flick on that knife. So yeah, overall, really beautifully made knife. I think a very handsome knife. I'm very glad it's in my collection. It is going to stay because it is just quite different. It's beautiful blade shape. So that's it, guys. That's it's my review of the Frame Rock. I like the knife. You know, if you can get your hands on, go check it out. See those quirks and decide for yourself. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, please thumbs up. Really would appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. If you didn't like it, if you've got any suggestions, please comment below. If you didn't like the video, hit that thumb down icon, but please hit it twice. Appreciate it. Thanks for popping by. Go well, and God bless.